Welcome in to the PHNX Suns podcast, brought to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's #1 sportsbook app. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a 5-star review. I'm Lindsey Smith, here with Saul Bookman and Gerald Bourget. Gentlemen, how you doing today?
You know why I'm wearing this hat? Because fuck Robert Horry. That's why.
Oh, man. Shots off the top.
That UofA hat not looking great.
Oh, it's always looking great, baby. Look at this sweet thing. Classic. Let's go.
Saul, have you learned nothing from the last 24 hours? UofA is literally to be blamed for every reason that we don't have a championship in this state.
I have learned that the entire college sports community is envious of the University of Arizona. Is all I took away from that conversation.
Is that what we took from it?
That's all I took away from it, guys.
How does your brain work to get to that from yesterday?
Because red and blue always looks good on me, so I'm always going to rep it. Let's go.
Man, I'm immensely jealous of always making the Elite Eight and never a step further.
It's always further than ASU. You can never talk basketball with us, Gerald. At least we've won a national championship in the last 25 years.
Well, let's talk football then. We can talk football.
Yeah. How many national championships have you guys won?
Oh, how many have you won? No.
That's right.
Come on now.
That's right.
So we got some news today from Adrian Wojnarowski. He tweeted out that I know that was a mouthful. The Raptors' 905 G League head coach Patrick Mutombo is joining the Phoenix Suns as an assistant coach. Mutombo had previously served as an assistant with Toronto and Denver. Now, it's not like a groundbreaking crazy trade, but it's still moves are being made. What do you guys make of this one?
Let's reserve the buses, get the champagne ready. Championship coming up. No, it's not okay. I mean, it's just a move. It's another guy. He's got a lot of experience. He's played at a lot of different levels. Fellow Metro State alum. There you go. Well, not fellow, but former Metro State alum. He's all I got.
He's well known for his player development stuff. You look at the guys that the Toronto Raptors have been able to churn out over the last few years with the guys that they've drafted and have risen to a prominent role on that team. So that's a good sign for the Suns. No relation to Dikembe Mutombo for anybody who was wondering, because you see that name, you automatically assume. But no relation there. He's got a good amount of coaching experience at various different levels. So hopefully we'll be able to hear from him here in the near future once they make that move official. But for now, it's just a report from Woj. So.
I'm anxious to see what his expertise is. I don't know too much about him, but is he more of like a guy that can develop wings, guards, or is he a guy that's more the front court type of dudes? And it would be sad and tragic if we got rid of TA and then we got somebody who was proficient at excelling at front court help.
That would be rough. We'll dive more into him as soon as the Suns are able to make this official news. But I think he's done a good job. You look at Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, just kind of guys across the board that he's been able to help with their development. So hopefully he'll be able to do some of that here with the Suns, no matter what happens with DA. Obviously, it'd be better if DA was still here, though.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the player development side of things, because that was something we did touch on a little bit over the season, was how are the Suns utilizing, building up their players? How are they developing them more? Having a coach with an area of expertise in that is going to be really beneficial down the line for this team, because we've got a lot of guys who are in that like middle ground area, right? Like they're starting to really come into their own, but they could still use a couple steps forward. So we'll see how that all kind of shapes out.
Couple guys. We got a whole roster full outside of Devin Booker and Chris Paul that need help. Like you look at Mikal Bridges, he needs help developing his offensive skill set to a point where he can feel comfortable taking over when the other two are inefficient. Cam Johnson, same way. Cam Payne, who knows? Maybe he can turn it around with this guy in the fold. So there's just, you can go from top to bottom of this roster. Everybody needs help. If you don't win a championship, everybody needs help.
Fair. We also got some really exciting news just a few minutes before this show started. Saul let us know that he talked to his people over at the DraftKings Sportsbook app, and it looks like they're going to get us odds for the Deandre Ayton situation that's happening right now, odds for which team he may end up with next season. So that's something that you guys should keep an eye out on, and we'll let you know when that goes live. But Saul, that's great news. Look at you, less than 24 hours later, getting things done.
It's kind of my job.
Look at you doing your job.
Look at me. Look at me. Showing up every day at 2:00 and doing my work. Look at that.
If you guys, when we see these odds, I'm just curious, like what are you kind of leaning towards right now? Until you see the actual odds, where are you going to put your money? Is it just the Suns?
Well, I will say this. I've seen some other places that have had the same kind of structure. And believe it or not, the Suns are not the favorite to keep them. There's some other teams that are front runners, and I don't know. I feel like it's a 50-50 shot, and I feel like you're splitting that 50 with several other teams. So I like the Suns odds still because they have all the control and the power on this. They don't have anything that comes across their table. They're going to keep them. Why would you just let them walk out the door for free? I can't wrap my head around that. So they wouldn't even let Jalen Smith walk out the door for free. You know what I mean? Like, they got something in return for him. I can't imagine you would just waste a first-round pick on essentially nothing after 4 years. Like, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah. I'd probably put the Suns at the top. It's not as high. Like, the odds are not as, superior to the other teams as I would have put them even a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, I'd probably have Suns at the top, probably, Hawks in that mix, Spurs near the top of that list as well.
Pistons.
Yeah, Pistons. Those would probably be the teams that I'd put in there. And I agree with Saul. They're not going to let him walk for nothing. But if the Suns really are okay with changing things up and doing a sign-in trade, then that's when things really get interesting.
I also want to say this because I feel like I've been pretty hard on the Suns about DA and him being the option. Mm-hmm. I also feel like, and it doesn't necessarily need to be said, but I'm going to say it anyway. DA also has a large part in how this goes. And I feel like there's a little bit of I understand that he sacrificed for the team, and I understand that's how he feels. But I also feel like he needs to understand that he didn't live up to the massive, expectations that were out there for him. Now, whether that's fair or not is debatable. But in terms of his consistency, I think he fell short of those expectations. You know what I mean? And especially when you see guys like Trae Young and Luka Doncic doing what they're doing, you got to come close. You don't have to be those guys, but you got to come close. And I think those two guys are far more consistent and deserving of those contracts more than DA was at this point in time. So I definitely feel like DA needs to swallow a little humility. And I will also say this, and I don't know, I'm wearing this hat, and it's ironic that I'm wearing this hat and now I'm about to bag on my school. But there is a history of guys coming from the University of Arizona and just absolutely smelling their own farts way greater than they should. And I've been on the record saying multiple times, like, dude, you need to have better conversations with people that are more qualified than your buddies down the street or the guys that you grew up with who are absolutely hyping you up. I know DA's got a crew around him, and he's had the same kind of crew that he's had around him since day one. And I'm talking about, like, the first day I went to media day with DA and his publicist and all these people around him, and it was like Jesus just walked through the door, and I was like, bro, like we're not there yet, right? We're not there yet. Like, Michael Jordan didn't just walk through this room, right? And so I feel like the advice that some of these guys get is far surpassed what their actual abilities and productivity has been. And I feel like DA needs a little bit of humility when it comes to that in order to understand what his true value is to this organization and really the future of his career. Because if he goes to Detroit, if he goes to Indiana, if he goes to one of these bum-ass places, Siberia, basically, you might be ruining your career because now the entire weight of that franchise is on your shoulders. And can you carry it? Probably not. Not off of what we've seen so far. So,
yeah, I can't speak to the UofA aspect of it all, obviously, but I do agree with you as far as, we've talked a lot about how, people mention the Suns are holding Ayton back or they're restricting him on offense or all these things. But a lot of the things that they've done have pertained to what he's best at and helped make him be more effective. At this point in his career, he's an elite finisher of plays, but not a creator or an instigator of them. And if you go to Detroit, if you go to Indiana, like, yes, you'll have Tyrese Halliburton in Indiana. Yes, you'll have Cade Cunningham, but those guys are not the facilitators that Chris Paul or Devin Booker are. Like, you're going to be expected to create your own offense, to make plays off the dribble. And maybe he shows things that he's only shown glimpses of here, but I guarantee you it's not going to be on the absurd efficiency that he has right now. And it's not going to be for a winning team that's winning 64 games and went to the finals a year ago. So I think people do need to bear that in mind. It's not that the Suns don't understand DA's value or that we don't understand his value. It's that as of right now, he has tangible areas where if he wants to be a certified max player, he needs to improve and he needs to grow in those areas.
Well, you know, it's go ahead. Do you have something, Lindsey?
I was just going to say, so what I'm gathering from this conversation here is that UofA is to blame, right?
I mean,
that's what I took from this whole thing.
When ASU barely has any prospects to talk about, of course it's always going to be UofA because we have too many to choose from.
You're the one who said it.
The NBA Finals is like it's like UofA Central, baby. Like, come on now. Like, first of all, let me go back to what Gerald said. Let me go back to what Gerald said real quick. Okay, when we talk about the system, we've had 4 years of being able to watch DA in this system, and I have been a proponent of the fact that the Suns they based their entire offense predicated on Devin Booker and CP3 as opposed to around Deandre Ayton, and rightfully so. But I think that the opportunities that we have seen in the last 4 years where DA has the potential to be able to do something either off the dribble or just be more assertive offensively, I think we haven't seen enough of that. You know, I've never seen DA just be like, you know, he gets double teamed, but he's like, man, fuck that. And he just goes and he still dominates, right? We haven't seen that too many times. We've seen him be able to excel in key positions and really he's maximized the opportunities that I think have been created for himself, for him by others. I think he has done that. But in terms of creating on his own, specifically creating on his own, I don't care if he gets the ball 5 times or if he gets the ball 15. I don't think that he has done enough to warrant a max contract the way he thinks he has. Now, does he deserve to get one? We'll see. But I don't think that in those situations you can sit there and be like, oh, yeah, he's a dominant player. You can't. It's, you know, 16 and 11, that's not a dominant player. That's a very, very, very good player. But it's not a great player. It's not a phenomenal player. It's not an all-star. And that's the level that Deandre Ayton has to reach.
Right. And we talked about this all last year leading up to these very conversations about what kind of extension DA deserved. And I think we were all in semi-agreement that in a vacuum, Deandre Ayton, you look at his production, his skill set, what he brings to the table, that alone is not worth a max, but you don't give out max contracts in a vacuum. It's all based on the marketplace. So like when Michael Porter Jr. got his, that was when the Suns, we needed to pay up at that point and they didn't. You risk this friction. It all comes to a head. And now we're in this shitty situation that we're in now. And I do think, you know, we'll talk later in the week because we're going to be doing a board game breakdown on, you know, the areas where DA can tangibly improve with the ball in his hands. But the Suns do a lot of what they do is predicated on not just Chris Paul and Devin Booker, but the gravity that DA has. And it's how defenses take care of that. Like, you don't want to let a guy like that roll down the lane unchecked, and that opens up a lot for the rest of the offense. So a lot of the times it's not that they're not looking for him or that they're, you know, not getting him enough touches or whatever. It's that defenses are rightfully taking away the easiest bucket on the floor, and it opens things up for the Suns. And I feel like that's what, when we have this conversation about they need to get DA more involved or they need to feed him more, it's interesting because it's like, okay, where is that going to come from? Because when he catches the ball at the top of the key and his defenders, you know, 3 feet off of him, that's where you can close the gap if you have a reliable dribble or a spin move or something like that to attack the rim. And those are the opportunities that DA will have if he develops that aspect of his game.
So in a nutshell, MPJ fucked everything up, not UofA.
Well, they can go hand in hand.
All right, I know I opened the door for this DA talk, but when we tweeted out, we said we were going to take a break from the DA talk and talk about other ways that the Suns can get better. So let's move on to that. But first, just a reminder, we will keep you updated when those DA odds hit the DraftKings Sportsbook app. But if you haven't yet, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now and use promo code PHNX when you sign up. Because after you use that code, you can make any $5 bet during the NBA Finals, which could end this week, and you're going to get $150 in free bets instantly. So take advantage of this offer. That's promo code PHNX, only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. Okay, we've talked a lot about DA. On accident and on purpose. But today...
Yes. It's just a fun topic, It's just a fun topic.
Today, we're going to talk about how the Suns can use their mid-level exception to get better this offseason. And before we get into specific targets, Gerald, can you kind of give us an overview of the money side of this and what we're looking at here as far as that goes?
Yeah, so the first thing is that I think we realized during the course of this season and the playoffs especially that maybe the Suns cannot rely on campaign in a playoff series. And that's kind of the biggest impetus behind this whole conversation is how can the Suns get better? They need another reliable shot creator, another distributor, another ball handler, because campaign wasn't it. He kind of regressed to the mean in a big way. And now you're left in this space where you're wondering, okay, is he the guy from the year before who had this breakout season and was a hero in the Western Conference Finals when Chris Paul sat out? Or is he the guy that completely disappeared, averaged like 4 points a game on 29% shooting in the playoffs? I think it's probably somewhere in between, but it's closer to the guy we saw this season. And to that end, the Suns are either going to have to trade for a player that's a campaign upgrade, or they're going to have to use their mid-level exception because they're already over the salary cap without even factoring in DA's contract. If he sticks around on an extension, they're automatically in the luxury tax. So in terms of what they can offer with the mid-level exception, if they are a luxury tax paying team, the first year of salary on the MLE would be worth $6.3 million. If they're a non-tax paying team, which it seems very unlikely that they will be that, they could offer, I think, $10.3 million for the first year. So in total, a non-tax paying team can offer up to 4 years and about $44 million using the full MLE, and a tax-paying team can go 3 years and about $20 million. It's kind of rare that teams use the full MLE, but just to give you a baseline idea of the players that you're looking for, most likely the Suns will be looking for a backup point guard in like the $6 million range, which makes it difficult because obviously you're not going to get a Kyrie or a Jalen Brunson with that type of money. You might not even get some of the guys that I wrote about for today.
You can get a Landry Shamet, though. Yeah.
You can't because he's on that $9 million contract. So you can't even do that. Yeah. So this is under the premise that the market kind of dries up for a given player and they want to take a slight discount, maybe take on more years, a 2 or 3 year deal to play with a title contender. And that's what you're hoping, that the allure of Monty Williams, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, James Jones, all these guys play into the recruiting side of this because their means are very limited otherwise. So that's kind of the background for this.
All right, well, let's dive into potential targets that the Suns could try to go after here in free agency. First up on the list, Ricky Rubio. We know Ricky. We owe Ricky a lot. Some of us love him and some of us, aka Saul, not so much. How do you guys feel about potentially bringing Ricky Rubio back into the fold?
I think the glamour of Ricky Rubio is, listen, he came to a team that won 19 games and had 0 point guard help, and he made them better. I will give him credit for that. I really do. Like he's a smart point guard. He's sneaky defensively, like cool. But I think Ricky Rubio's time in the NBA is coming to an end here soon because he's getting a little bit up there in age. He's getting a little slower. Those hips have always been stiff, and they're just getting stiffer. Like I as a backup, maybe, but then you're sacrificing the offensive side of things to a degree, and I just don't know if it's really worth it.
All right. So for me, there are obvious concerns. Like I don't know if you're going to be able to get him for the mid-level because, obviously he's coming off that ACL tear, which is the second ACL tear in that same knee. That's concerning. He is 32, so he's getting up there. He's not old yet, but he's getting up there. But in terms of guys that you would be able to trust, familiarity with the system and with the players too, because he played really well next to Devin Booker. He had one of the best seasons of his career scoring wise and his best 3-point shooting season here in the Valley when he was here. He's got that familiarity with DA, and they built that chemistry during their time on the floor together. And if you need a guy who can both come off the bench and run your second unit and then also fill in spot starts for Chris Paul, I'm not sure how much better you're going to be able to do on the open market with the MLE at least than Ricky Rubio. Like he's not a good 3-point shooter, obviously, but he is a good ball handler, distributor, defender. He's a veteran. He's a guy that's been in playoff series, and he just had a really good season for the Cleveland Cavaliers before he got hurt. The only reason he got traded was because he got hurt. And he was putting up similar numbers to what he did in Phoenix there in Cleveland. So he has plenty of experience both with the Suns and the Cavs in terms of filling that backup mentor role. And that would be pretty nice if you could have that coming off the bench.
With Ricky, it's also, and a lot of these guys that you're hoping to get a bargain on, right?
Right.
Is that there's going to be some inherent risk, and you might find yourself in the same damn position you were just in with campaign. There's a reality to that. That could happen. Ricky Rubio could come here and just not be the same player anymore after another ACL surgery, and his intelligence could only take him so far. But I don't know. I know there's a lot of people that are very, very high on Ricky Rubio as if he's the savior, and he's not. So I'm opposed to that just because of that. I'm like, it's again, Michael Jordan ain't walking through that door. Let's pump the brakes on some of these guys. But I'm not a big. He does have beautiful eyes, though. I don't know if you've ever seen him up close.
Oh yeah,
he has some of the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen in my life.
No, you know what he has is the best eyelashes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, both.
It's like, the eyelashes that put it over
color,
the top.
The brown in his eyes. I was just like,
swoon between the eyes and the hair. He's just
he's got the whole package, man. He's a beautiful man. I mean, let's be real.
Yes, just because he looks like basketball Jesus doesn't mean
pretty Ricky, baby.
No, we could have the point guard and basketball Jesus on the same
gosh.
team.
Oh, put the shirt. Let's go. Never mind. I'm on board. Bring Ricky in. Let's go.
We changed his mind, ladies and gentlemen. We got him.
I think for me, the biggest like red flag here or just concern is the injury, because we're talking about potentially also him not being able to play for the first handful of months of the season. Mm-hmm. Does that put us in a bad spot? Are we kind of still up a creek without a paddle? Then he has to have the time to kind of get back in to playing shape and seeing the fit and the chemistry and all that stuff. So that's my biggest concern with Ricky. But outside of that, I would love to have Ricky back in a Suns jersey.
And that is a fair concern, because I think he tore his ACL in December, so he probably wouldn't be back until around December, or maybe a month early, maybe a month later, who knows. That's probably why you might be able to get him on the mid-level, because in terms of on-court production, he outplayed that kind of contract, especially if the Suns are a tax-paying team. But that's kind of the beauty of it, because Campaign is under contract for next season. You would still have him for the regular season. The key here is having a healthy Ricky Rubio for the playoffs when you're not 100% sure that you can turn to Campaign, and that Rubio would be an upgrade in some of the areas that you need to be able to rely on a guy in a playoff series.
But at that same token, I mean, Campaign could very well come in this next season and ball his ass off, and then you don't need Ricky Rubio. You know what I mean? It's like I feel like you definitely want somebody there day one. And so that would be my hesitation on Ricky Rubio for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right, next up on the list, Tyus Jones. Now, this one is really intriguing for many reasons. Obviously, the fact that he's 26, I think, is the biggest green flag here, if you will. He's got room to grow, room to get better. Obviously, learning from somebody like Chris Paul would be phenomenal for him. But the hard part is he's coming off of a really, really good season, and he'll probably have a lot of options presented to him. Would this amount of money that the Suns could offer be enough to convince him to come over here? Not sure.
I love Tyus Jones.
Mm-hmm.
I love Tyus Jones. And I think Tyus Jones and Jalen Brunson probably did the most in especially in the playoffs in order to make some more money than anybody else in the league. I think those two guys specifically just made themselves a lot of money. Tyus Jones, the thing with Tyus is when you, even in that Warrior series, specifically, I think it was game 4 where the first game without Ja Morant, and everybody thought they had no chance. There's no way they're going to go into Golden State and win this game. And they damn near did. And Tyus Jones was a large reason why. And he just did not give a fuck. And I love that about him. And that's what I feel like. That's why Campaign in his A game, he just doesn't give a shit. And that's what I love about him. Tyus Jones gives me a lot of that machismo. You need a little arrogance. You need a little, hey, I'm gonna pump my guys up because we're here to ball kind of guy. And that's what I love about him. And offensively, he's a really good option as a backup point guard. That's for sure.
Yeah, he kind of checks all the boxes as far as what Monty talked about a lot last year in terms of what he wanted from Campaign. Just be solid. Like Tyus Jones is a solid player. The problem with him, obviously, is that he might have outplayed. He's kind of one of those guys who's too good to be a backup, but might not be good enough to be a full-time starter.
Yeah.
And if there is a team out there with cap space that needs a starter, like say the Wizards or the Knicks, all they have to offer is their MLE as well. But I think both of those teams are non-tax paying, so they could offer about $4 million more as a starting salary there. So there's a chance that another team will outbid the Suns, and the Grizzlies can go over the cap to keep him. They can offer him more money. So that's a problem there. If they want to keep him, they can. They have the means to do so. So that's a tough one. He is 26 years old. Some team is going to be willing to invest in his upside. So he might just be too good for the Suns to afford on a $6.3 million salary. But if they tack on extra years, if the market dries up, you never know what happens in free agency. Maybe the Grizzlies make a big trade or something. You can never plan for it. So he's a guy that we should at least have on our radar because he did shoot 39% from 3 this year, which was a career best. He's got a really good floater game. And again, he's just a guy that on both ends of the floor is going to be solid, even though he's a little bit undersized.
He gives me Fred VanVleet vibes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's like Fred VanVleet light.
Yeah.
Honestly, though, if the option for him to return and continue to play with the Grizzlies is there, I'd be shocked if he didn't take that because what the Grizzlies are doing is very similar to what the Suns kind of had last year. You know what I mean? And if you were a part of that resurgence of a franchise, you want to stick with it because it's the story, it's the camaraderie and your guys. You know what I mean? So it would be great if this was a potential option for the Suns, but I wouldn't put too much stock in this one as far as getting your hopes up too high. All right, next up on the list, Patty Mills. So he currently has a $6.2 million player option with the Nets. And Gerald, you noted the Suns could offer him just slightly more at $6.3 million. I mean, he would bring a lot of scoring and shooting that we definitely need, but is that even enough to convince him to even consider it?
I don't know, because if he opts out, he can re-sign with the Nets for more, which is something I included in the article. So technically the Nets can still offer him more. This would be a situation where the last year in Brooklyn has just been unpleasant because you look at all the turbulence, the fact that they were swept in the first round, Kyrie's future is uncertain. Ben Simmons, we don't know when the hell he's going to play again. Like, if Patty Mills looks around and is like, I can't compete for a title here, I'd rather go somewhere else. Phoenix is an option for him. And it would be, $6.3 million would probably be around market value for him. He's not a guy who would address a lot of the Suns, secondary playmaking concerns. He's not kind of that facilitator guard, but he is a guy that can shoot a lot, high volume, really efficient. He shot 40% this year. I think he's like a 39% career 3-point shooter. He's got championship experience, really good catch and shoot guy. And we've talked about this. The Suns need to get up more threes. So a guy like that doesn't really give you a lot of shot creation himself, but he does spread the floor and he does give you 3-pointers, which is something this team could use more of.
Patty Mills thrives in consistency. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. He showed you that in San Antonio. He showed you that when it was just Kevin Durant out there and no Kyrie Irving through stretches this season, because he knew what his role was and he played it at a high level. But then you start throwing in the variables and everything just kind of got out of whack. So you can't really hold that against him this season. But he is also, was he 33, 34, I think?
I think he's 32.
32. So he's also getting a little bit get up there. So you're again, it's a guessing game. Is this the beginning of a trend of downward play, or was it just the inconsistency? And I would probably wager, just because of his effort, his enthusiasm for the game, he has a lot of energy out there on the court. He's always been a nuisance. We know that watching him play. Wouldn't be a bad player to have. Also, like, I can very easily see a situation where Devin Booker and Patty Mills are on the court at the same time, and you have a consistent outside threat in him. So that he's a better 3-point shooter than Chris Paul. Like, I like that. So, I don't hate the Patty Mills. I'm not exactly on board with it because I do tend to veer towards the youth, but definitely not a bad option.
I did look it up. He is 33 years old, so he's definitely on the older side. Right. But yeah.
On the older side, 33. Sports always makes us all feel so old. All right.
I don't know who you're talking to.
Everyone on the internet who always tweets about it.
I feel young as hell right now.
Is that because you're drinking 4 Peaks, Bruce? Is that why?
It absolutely
keeps your youthfulness?
Drinking this Suns brew right now.
Nice.
There you go. If you guys have not grabbed a beer and buckled in yet, you should do so, because we got 4 more guys to talk about. We highly recommend grabbing a 4 Peaks beer. The peach one smells really delightful, as Saul mentioned. The Suns brew. Gerald, what have you been drinking recently?
The Suns brew is my all-time favorite, but I do have a fridge full of peach ale right now, so I've been drinking those, slowly going through those during the week. Weekend comes, it might be a little more empty, but we'll see.
And then, of course,
IPAs, baby.
The Kilt Lifter too. Kilt Lifter OG. So I feel like if you haven't tried it yet, that's definitely one to at least put on your list for you guys to try. But just a reminder, that's 21 and older only. Enjoy it responsibly. All right, next up on our list, Gary Payton II. What you guys think about Gary?
I love me some Gary.
So this one's kind of interesting because he's not really technically a backup point guard. He's more of an off guard kind of guy, not a facilitator. I think he averaged less than 1 assist in like 17 minutes a game this season, but he is that defensive irritant that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks that the Suns don't really have on the perimeter. He's a hustle play guy, a guy that gets a lot of offensive rebounds, a lot of steals, deflections, that type of thing. And he's actually not a terrible 3-point shooter. He started off shooting the year a lot hotter than he wound up, but he's still serviceable in that regard. And if you can get a guy like that, if you can address that backup point guard spot with a potential trade elsewhere, then use that MLE on Gary Payton II, like that's a pretty good offseason. And maybe the Warriors are willing to duck super far into the luxury tax because they've got another expensive summer coming up. If they win a title, maybe they'll be more willing to do that. But Gary Payton might be a guy that slightly outplays what they're willing to offer him, how far they're willing to dive into the luxury tax. So he's a guy that you look at if you have that available, and maybe you throw him an offer.
Yeah, GP2, I don't know if that comment was serious or not, but GP2 is definitely not a 4. He's I don't know. I don't like him at the backup point guard position at all. He's just not that guy for me. I do love the addition of him though. And so I will say that I think him being on this team, again, you need those guys. One of the things that you could see is very evident with this Suns team, especially guys like Mikal Bridges, Devin Booker, even Deandre Ayton, if he stays in the fold, is they thrive on energy, guys. Like they just do. Like it feeds them. And you need more of those guys in the fold. I think it's nice when you have Chris Paul who could stay, reserved and be cooler than the other side of the pillow. But you need dudes that'll hype you up. We saw that with JaVale when he came into the fold. you see how these guys feed off of each other. And so Gary Payton is one of those dogs. Like, he is the absolute dog. He had to come up through the G League. He went to Oregon State, for Christ's sake. Like, nobody goes to Oregon State and makes it to the NBA unless they're an absolute dog. And so him and his father, the only two that really count. And so I like Gary Payton Jr. I think, or do they call him the second, or do they call him Junior?
I think they call him the second. I think they call him GP2, but yeah, it is what
odd.
it is.
Anyway, I love him. I think him being a Phoenix Sun would be a very good asset for this franchise for sure. So I'm always going to be on board with him.
All right, next up, this name has been asked about in the comments multiple times so far. Don't worry, guys, we did not leave him off the list. Dennis Schroder. The question is, would he be willing to take a lesser role to come with the Suns? And then on the flip side, he probably would in order to play with his guy, Chris Paul. He did have his best season back in the 1920 season over at OKC, backing up Chris Paul. Would he want to do that again?
Gerald just took a big, deep breath, and I feel like I echo his sentiments, but I'll let you go, Gerald.
You have to make the chat real mad.
Well, okay, I do have thoughts about Dennis Schroder, and that's the first reason I sighed. And then the second reason I sighed was Baxter Holmes just tweeted this out, and I saw it on my phone. News: a longtime Phoenix Suns employee resigned from the team last month, alleging she became the target of bullying and retaliation by superiors after raising gender equity concerns and misconduct within the organization, documents obtained by ESPN show. So that will be something we'll definitely need to talk about tomorrow once we get a chance to read the story. But obviously, just from the headline and the teaser alone, not great. So not great.
Well, okay.
Yeah. I don't
news as it happens. Here we go.
I don't want to say anything more without reading the story first. But for Dennis Schroder, there's two ways you can look at this. You can look at this as he was the guy that wore out his welcome in LA, wore out his welcome in Boston, is now playing for a Rockets team that is expected to do basically nothing next year. And he can be one of the main options on that team. Or you can look at it as he played really well in his last season under Chris Paul as the backup for the Thunder. He averaged, I think, almost 19 points a game, shot pretty efficiently. And Chris Paul has sung his praises every time Dennis Schroder has come up when he's been asked about him. So if you're looking for a guy who can create his own offense, it doesn't get a lot better on this list than Dennis Schroder. A lot of the guys we've talked about have been solid backup floor generals. They've been guys that, can share the floor with Chris Paul or Devin Booker. He's a guy that if you need a guy to go out and get himself a bucket, he can do that. Now, he does leave a lot to be desired on the defensive end because of that shoot first mentality that he has. But if you can channel that properly, and if you can get him for the mid-level, I think he played last season on the mid-level, that's not a bad backup option. Like, that would be somebody that you could probably trust a little bit more in a playoff series if you need offense than what we saw from Campaign. But I understand people's opinions of him are split because he is a kind of, not a controversial player, but a guy that people have strong opinions about.
I just do not want any part of Dennis Schroder on the Phoenix Suns. I don't. I just don't. I don't feel like he's anywhere near consistent enough. Obviously, he didn't know that about himself, because otherwise, why would you risk all that money that he threw away because he believed in himself, and that gamble failed? Yeah. So I've usually, when guys are in like a contract year, they play out of their minds because they know my money's on the line. Right. And this guy went the opposite way. And when I see those kind of things, I feel like you kind of regress to the mean and you just are who you are. I think Dennis Schroder is an average point guard. I don't think he's anything more than that. And I don't think he's what the Suns need, point blank. That's fair. And the last time he had a really good season with the Thunder, that was 2 years ago now. So it hasn't been, he wasn't great in LA, wasn't great in Houston, wasn't great in Boston. And now look at where the Celtics are after getting rid of him. So it's not exactly a ringing endorsement for him. You would be hoping that reuniting with Chris Paul, playing under Monty, would allow him to kind of rehabilitate what he's able to do in more of a six-man role again.
But again, I don't feel great about this particular option.
All right, moving on. Gerald, to be completely honest with you, I feel like I'm going to screw up this name. Is it Delon?
Delon?
Delon Wright, right?
Delon Wright.
I was wrong on all of them. My bad. Delon Wright. So, Gerald, in the article that you wrote over at gophnx.com, you said, quote, "The question is whether being a solid, understated backup with a penchant for racking up steals would be enough of an upgrade to earn the lion's share of minutes over Payne." How would you answer your own question?
It's tough because I don't know that he's a distinguishable upgrade over Campaign. Maybe in a playoff series, if you're assuming that Payne just reverts to what we saw in the playoffs this year, but I don't even know if you can do that because he was just so bad. Like, you can only go up from there, honestly. Delon Wright is kind of like Tyus Jones was a couple of years ago. He was a guy that, people projected, oh, he could probably be a starting point guard, too good to be a backup, maybe not good enough to be a starter. And the last year or so hasn't really done much to prove that he's worthy of that same shot that Tyus Jones is probably going to get. He's a guy that would definitely be available on that mid-level exception, I think, especially because the Hawks have a ton going on with their offseason. Their cap sheet is overloaded right now. So I don't think they're going to pay to keep him more than that, at least. You look at his raw numbers, they're not great. I think he averaged 4.4 points, 2.4 assists in 19 minutes a game. But when he has gotten, sizable minutes over the last couple of years, he has been a double-digit scorer. He has shot 37.5% from three over the last 2 years. But again, he's already 30 years old, which a lot of people don't realize about Delon Wright. He's older than most people recognize. So I'm not sure that this is worth the investment unless you are really worried about what Campaign brings to the table.
I like the length. I like the versatility. He can match up on several different guys on the perimeter. He's an average point guard in terms of playmaking. He's average. I would even wager to say that he's not a very good point guard in terms of getting others involved at a high level, like a Ricky Rubio or somebody like that. But if you bring him in, you're bringing him in knowing that defensively he's going to hold his own, and he will be a serviceable shooter. That's about it. Yeah. There's just not much about Delon Wright that's really going to make you jump out of your seat or get you excited or the plays that he's going to make. Or he's just an average kind of player. He's easily forgettable. So I think if you brought him in, it's an upgrade over Elfrid Payton. It might be an upgrade over Campaign, but that's just completely assuming that Campaign stays the terrible player that he was the last several months of the season. And I don't know. Campaign is just an enigma right now, and I don't know how to think about him at the moment. So Delon Wright, it's okay.
With Wright, you're kind of hedging your bets on Campaign. You're saying we're going to trust in Campaign to get started, but if he shows us what he showed us all of last year, we have this other alternative that we might need to turn to.
I feel like you got a Delon Wright to a degree in Landry Shamet and how he played, especially defensively this season. Like I feel like those two are almost mirror images of each other. So if you think Landry Shamet, think Delon Wright. Do you want another one of those? And I'm not saying that in a negative way, because if Delon Wright is shooting 37 to 40% from 3-point range, then good. Like that's a good acquisition. But is that what you need? Is that what you're looking for? And I don't know if you're really looking for that specifically.
Is it enough too?
Yeah, is it enough? Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, and he did play well for the Hawks in the playoffs. Someone in the comments brought that up as well. He was very solid for them, which again would have been an improvement over what they got out of Campaign. But the question, as always with this, is Campaign going to be that guy again, or do they need him to somehow revert to this version of himself that he's never going to be again? I don't know.
And Delon Wright, again, going back to the whole energy thing, Delon Wright is the opposite of energy. If you've ever watched him play, he's very just like,
right.
No emotion. Like he just plays and that's it. That's because that's how they build those guys over in Utah. They have like no emotion, just play the game and go home. That's it.
All right, guys, we're going to round out the list here with the
Bet you didn't think Utah was going to catch some strays today, did you?
They always got to catch some strays.
Always.
If there were odds on that, I feel like they would be pretty high that it would be Utah catching straight, to be honest. All right, Goran Dragic. What do you guys think about bringing back Goran? I mean, he is a little bit older. He's 36. Mm-hmm. Chris Paul's 37, but he could still be pretty effective.
Yeah, and he did show that in the playoffs. And I think there was a lot of pushback when I brought his name up as a potential trade target at last year's trade deadline because of the way he left.
Just at me, bro. Just at me.
No, it wasn't even you. But like people were like, "Oh, I can't stand the way that he left Phoenix, and I'll never forget what he did in 2015."
Okay, like, but did we learn nothing from yesterday's interview that you don't know what was going on behind the scenes? You don't know what people in the organization were saying or how they were treating these players. Like, give them the benefit of the doubt. Most of the time, players aren't disgruntled for no reason.
And Dragic was right to be disgruntled. Like, they were a team that was, I think, sub 500 or barely above 500 at the time. He was coming off an all-NBA season, and they stuck him in the corner as a small forward. Like, that team was going nowhere. That organization deserves zero benefit of the doubt. And he was right to want to move on. Like, he wound up competing for a finals in Miami. So I don't get the resentment over Dragic and how that whole thing ended. But what better way to mend those bridges than helping lead this team to its first ever championship and a happy reunion story? I'm just saying. But like, look, I know I'm biased. I know I'm biased because Dragic was actually the second NBA player that I ever interviewed, and he gave me a full 20-minute sit down with some kid that was just in college and didn't know what the hell he was doing. But like, he did show in the playoffs on the court, he still has something to offer. I think he averaged 10.5 points for the Nets in that first round series, shot 56%. And he was one of their primary offensive creators against the Celtics defense that was clamping the Nets down that whole series. So he can still be that guy. I don't know if he can make it through a full season healthy. I don't know, it's risky to have a 37-year-old point guard backed up by a 36-year-old, but he's good. He can shoot, he can create his own shot, and he can create for others.
This season of Suns basketball brought to you by so-and-so nursing home.
Don't
do it, guys. Like, I don't want to see the geriatric squad out there game after game. Otherwise, I'd be like, hey, you know what? I'll go out there and play. Fuck it. I'm old. Shit, is that the requirement here? Like, Dragic is good. He's good. Okay. He's serviceable. I just, again, like, I always think, why not get somebody that you feel like you can maybe build a future around as well, or at least develop them along with your program? Because I feel like you need more than just a year here. With Monty, I feel like you just, hell, if Holiday couldn't get any run after 4 months of being in this organization, despite the fact that every point guard on the roster was absolutely shitting the bed, what makes me think he's going to trust Dragic to come in here and just all of a sudden take the reins at the backup point guard position and be good with it? Like, I just don't see that.
Well, Dragic is a more proven commodity than Aaron Holiday is, though. Aaron Holiday has only been in the league for a couple of years. He joined at the trade deadline.
But not in Monty's system.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not a difficult system to grasp, especially if you need another ball handler or playmaker.
Are you saying Aaron Holiday is dumb?
I'm not. I'm saying he came
It's not a difficult system to grasp unless you're Aaron Holiday.
I'm saying he came mid-season, and it's harder to learn mid-season in a third-string point guard role than it is if you join in the offseason, get a full training camp, and have been in the league for, 16 years, whatever it's been. It's a lot easier in that role. But I do think, like, to your point about wanting a younger guy who they can kind of groom, I get that impulse, and that would be the ideal goal. I don't think if you look at this class of free agent point guards, you're going to find that guy. Like, Tyus Jones is probably the closest thing, but you're not going to be able to afford him most likely with a mid-level. So you're either going to have to trade for that guy or just get a guy who makes you better for the next year and try and find that solution down the road.
And I know we're talking about the MLE. I get that. But I do feel like if you really want to adequately, shore up that backup point guard position, and really that position is not only the backup point guard position, but could ultimately end up being a point guard down the road. And I think that's also what you're kind of looking at. That's why a guy like Tyus Jones kind of appeals to me a little bit more, is that I feel like I feel like you want that potential of a stopgap in between Chris Paul and whatever comes next. And I feel like this guy is going to have to fit that, in my opinion. Why not? So kill two birds, if you will, is kind of the way I'm looking at it. That's why I would pass on Dragic.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think if Tyus Jones is available for the MLE, that'd be one of the biggest steals of the offseason for the Suns if they could find a way to swing that. I just don't know how likely it is, unfortunately.
And what I meant to say at the beginning of what I was saying was, I don't think they're going to find that guy with the MLE.
Oh, yeah,
I think it's going to end up being, I think it's going to be by trade or just a free agent contract.
Fair.
All right. If you guys want to dive deeper into that, head on over to gophnx.com and read the article that Gerald posted over there. It's got a lot more detail and in-depth. So check that out again, gophnx.com. So earlier in the show, I gave everyone permission to have a beer at 2:30 in the afternoon on a Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm giving you permission to also throw in a scratch-made THC gummy from our friends at OG's. It's Tuesday. It's not the best day of the week. I mean, Taco Tuesday makes it really is like the saving grace, but Tuesdays aren't exactly like, yay, it's Tuesday. So whatever you need to do to make your Tuesday more fun, we recommend Four Peaks Beer or OG Scratch-Made THC gummies. This is your permission slip to indulge. If you want to try all of the amazingly delicious flavors that OG's Brands has to offer, head on over to ogsbrands.com. That's OGEEZbrands.com to find an OG's near you. Chris in the chat said Lindsey wants you to chill. This is true. And so says Jay, says fantastic. I'm glad that you guys are all on board.
Also, Gerald, to your point about Tyus Jones and him not wanting to leave Memphis, one of the appealing factors about coming to Phoenix is, hey, you won't have to play behind the point guard forever.
Yeah, because John Morant's not
you ain't taking John's spot. That's for damn sure.
That would definitely have to be part of the recruiting pitch for sure. And they have DeAnthony Melton over there too. So it's not like minutes are going to be available there forever. They might be here. Who knows?
Everyone in the chat earlier when we were talking about Memphis was like, can we get Melt back? Like, that was such a shame having to lose Melt. Like, he'd be our guy. Yeah. I love DeAnthony Melton. He was a really, really nice dude.
Miss him.
All right, we're going to round out the show with a little Train Machine Tuesday. I got to stop doing this.
Is that the song? Yes. Oh, hell yeah, Lindsey.
Yo, like the minute that I started, Emma, I was like, I immediately regret this.
Cut that. We're going to jingle that shit up.
Yep.
Let's
go.
Not.
Hell
God,
yeah.
Maybe I need to cut back on the OGs and the Four Peaks. It's just like I'm out here just doing really ridiculous things.
Hell yeah. Yep.
All right, let's see what's on the docket for Train Machine Tuesday. What do we got in store?
What do we have here? Cam Johnson and the Kings. Well, all right. So I'll be 100% honest. I don't feel great about this trade that I.
Oh, but you should, Gerald. But you should.
All feels good enough for all of us, Gerald. Yes. Don't worry.
Hey, so I'm the guy that you brought in on the MLE that brings the energy. Let's go.
Yes, that's
Saul
fair.
is JaVale McGee.
JaVale McGee. All right. So my thing with this trade is we're so sick and tired of talking DeAndre Ayton sign-in trades that we decided to come up with a trade that doesn't involve DA in the slightest. And in this scenario, we're assuming DA is back. So here's what I just spitballed with some time that I had this morning. If you look at this trade, we've got Harrison Barnes and Justin Holiday coming to the Phoenix Suns in exchange for, I think it's Cam Johnson, Dario Saric, and Landry Shamet. Now, there's a lot of ways to look at this particular trade. And Saul, I'm just going to let you give us your base thoughts because you're excited. I can't.
Saul's chomping at the bit.
Yes, he is.
Listen, if you want to win a championship this year, with DA in the fold, this is the way to do it. This is the way to do it. I like Harrison Barnes. He's a more athletic guy than Dario Saric. He has a championship pedigree. I love Harrison Barnes. I think he'd be great off the ball away from DA. I think it would be fantastic. He can match up in multiple positions. I love it. And then you bring in a guy that everybody was hoping we would get in a trade anyway with the Jalen Smith trade in Justin Holiday. And he's flexible. He can shoot. He brings all the intangibles that you want from an off-guard position. Like, it's win-win right there. Like, you can't go wrong. Landry Shamet is gone too. Oh my God. That just made it even better.
Oh,
like,
come on.
Oh my goodness. Oh, when I saw this, I was like, this is a no-brainer. No-brainer.
All right. So here's the thinking. Here's the thinking on this one. Landry Shamet is mostly and Saric are to match contracts, to match salary, because you got to get to a certain amount. And Cam Johnson, as much as he's the centerpiece of this deal, his contract's only like $6 million. So you need to throw other names in there. They'd be getting a shooter who's under contract with Shamet for the foreseeable future, and they'd be getting a really good, potentially league best sniper in Cam Johnson, who's still young. He's still 25 or 26, whatever he is. So, and they'd be able to extend him. So that would have a lot of appeal to the Kings, especially when you look at the fact that Barnes and Justin Holiday are on expiring contracts. So as much as the Suns are getting the most talent out of this, the Kings are getting more team control. They're getting more that they can build for their future with. And I don't know if Harrison Barnes has a long-term place in Sacramento anyway, so you might as well deal him for something. I don't know how much better you're going to get in terms of young players than Cam Johnson with a deal like that.
The only thing that could have made that deal better, and I guarantee you the numbers don't work, so I'm just pulling this out of my ass because somebody literally just said it in the chat, is if you swapped Justin Holiday for Davion Mitchell. That's the only way this deal gets better.
Well, I mean, yeah, but the Kings are dumb, but they're not that dumb. They're not. Well, I can
debatable, Gerald.
I can't say never, but I don't think that would happen. But anyway, like, you would still get Harrison Barnes, who'd be an upgrade at the 4. He can play the 3 or the 4. He can plug a lot of holes. He's a good defender, can create his own shot, as he's been doing the last couple of years in Dallas and Sacramento. Good shooter, good rebounder. So you're improving in a lot of areas there. Justin Holiday, we've talked all about the 3-point shooting needs of this team. He fits that to a T, and he's an underrated defender on the wing. Can play multiple positions as well. So you are getting better with this trade. This is like an all-in on this year kind of deal, especially if you're keeping.
And that's it. And that's it. Only for this year. I'm not talking about the future. I'm talking about, you absolutely would have mollywopped the Dallas Mavericks had you had these two guys in the fold.
Right. The problem is, if you don't win this year, then you missed out on a core 4. Cam Johnson's gone forever, and you're left trying to either re-sign Harrison Barnes and Justin Holiday, or figure out how you're going to improve without being able to re-sign them. Again, that's a question for down the road, and it'd be more than worth it if they did win a title this year. But you are putting all of your eggs in that basket. You're giving up on Cam Johnson's potential. That's why I have hesitation.
But Cam Johnson also has 1 year left, and then now he would be a restricted free agent. I know that, but
yeah, and you can extend him, which they should.
Sure. But at the same time, I'll propose this. Let's say in your scenario next year, you have these two guys in, it doesn't work out, we don't win the finals, whatever. If you were able to still bring back at a minimum Justin Holiday, how much of a drop-off would that really be from Cam Johnson to Justin Holiday?
It's a drop-off in terms of, I still think Cam Johnson's nowhere near his ceiling. So it's still just in terms of pure shooting prowess, like, Cam Johnson is already that dude, and he's going to be that dude the more that he develops. Like, he was already, top 5 in 3-point percentage this year. Like, he's really, really good. And he's like
what was the percentage after the injury? Do you know that off the top of your head?
I don't, but that was only like a 1-month sample size, so I'm not going to read too much into it. Yeah, but I do. And the playoffs, he wasn't even that bad. It wasn't as good as he was during the regular season. But like, most teams would kill for a young wing like Cam Johnson, and the Suns have 2 of them in Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson. So I think, similar to what we talk about with DA, like, all these teams are interested. He must have something to bring to the table. I feel that same way about Cam. But yeah, if you could get better and win a title this year, maybe you make that move. I don't know. It's tough.
This also hangs on DA still being around, correct?
Would you make,
if DA is gone, would you make the same trade?
Nope.
You're making that move. Yeah. You're making that move to bolster what you already have and keep everything else pretty similar to what you already have.
I'm telling you right now, if the Suns don't bring back DA, and they don't trade for a superstar, the championship window has absolutely closed. It's absolutely closed. There's just no way. There's no way.
With Chris Paul, I agree with that.
Yeah, with Chris Paul.
Yeah.
Because Chris Paul and Devin Booker without DeAndre Ayton, and I know DeAndre Ayton isn't like this massive third contributor, but he does enough of the small things to shore up a lot of the stuff that they don't have to worry about so much in order to keep the Suns at a level that is equivalent to a championship contender. Without DA, now you have to shore up that big hole. And I don't think people realize how big that hole will be, especially defensively. I know he doesn't block shots like Dikembe Mutombo, but still, like, he's still a very, very, very good defender. And I'm telling you, the Suns are going to be paying if they don't do that.
So just a follow up, because Cam Johnson is obviously included in this conversation. How much further do you think Cam can go as far as getting better? Or do you think this is close to what we're going to get from Cam?
I think he's still got room to grow offensively. I think he obviously needs to get better at attacking the rim more often, like we've talked about, creating some more of his own offense. But even if he doesn't do that, he still has a lot of value as a guy that can handle on the perimeter, that spaces the floor. We talk a lot about DA's gravity. Cam Johnson has similar gravity on the perimeter. And he's a guy that can shoot over defenders that are jumping at him. Like, that's a big thing to have. A lot of guys, they can shoot when they're wide open, but to be able to launch over defenders closing out is another thing entirely. Cam can do that. He has a lot of value, and he's a good defender as well. So I feel like it's a tough one, man. Harrison Barnes is really good, though. He's really good.
I think Cam Johnson is pretty close to his max, in my opinion. Like, I feel like the biggest thing Cam Johnson lacks is consistency, in my opinion. Like, I just don't feel like he's consistent enough game in and game out to where you know what you're going to get. Defensively, he's consistent, but he's still in between trying to find his game from the perimeter and to the basket and everything in between. He still struggles with that from time to time. And I need to see more of him being able to create his own shot, the pull-up jumpers and things like that. We saw glimpses of that actually in the NBA Finals. He was hitting that midi. He was pulling up from the baseline, mid-range. I was like, oh, there's Cam. That's the glimpse that I wanted to see. And then it just kind of went away a little bit last year. He put it together in spurts, but never consistent enough from beginning to end. That's the biggest jump that he's going to have to take. And he's 26 years old either. It's not like he's some 22, 23-year-old rookie. You know what I mean? Like, he was an older guy when he came out of college anyway. So I think these next couple seasons, you have to determine whether or not he's going to end up being that guy, or if you can find somebody that can replace him that might take you to another level. That's why I say if DA is back, this trade, I would do it. But if he's not back, you got to keep Cam.
I will say, though, he has only been in the league for a couple of years. So as much as he is on the older side, he still does have room for growth in that regard. I don't know. And I do think we should point out, like, when he did start for this team, part of it could be role as well, being a backup with an inconsistent group of guys. And the fact that he got injured a couple of times too doesn't help. But like, when he was a starter, he averaged like 18 points a game, really good shooting percentages. He fit well with that group. Whether he can be a full-time four defensively, that's a question. But I do think he has room to grow on the offensive end, especially if he does get that promotion to a starter.
Emma, bring back that comment. I think it was David Bailey talking about top 5 3-point shooter, and Saul wants to get rid of him. Yeah, listen, that's such a subjective comment, right? Like, it depends on what you're getting back. Like, I'm not just saying get rid of Cam Johnson. Like, get rid of him. I don't want him. No, it depends on what you get back. If you traded him and ended up getting Kevin Durant, would you still be mad that I said we got to get rid of Cam Johnson? No, you wouldn't. Like, come on now, David, be better than that.
All right. So throughout the show, like I mentioned earlier, we gave you the permission slip, the hall pass to get the party this week, start early with some 4-piece and OGs. But I just want to make sure that you guys all know that we genuinely care about your health and wellness as well. And with that, we want to remind everybody that COVID-19 is not gone. It is still running through Phoenix and Arizona and the world as a whole. So just a reminder, COVID-19 vaccines are free for everyone 5 and older, and those who are 12 and older are also now eligible for a booster. So if you want to find a vaccine location, head on over to azhealth.gov/find vaccine. Stay safe, stay healthy, but you can still have a little bit of fun while you're doing all those things too. It's moderation, right? Enjoy responsibly, right? Any final thoughts, guys?
Oh, I hate Trade Machine Tuesday.
Why? Why do you hate Trade Machine Tuesday? It's fun.
Well, because it is fun, but then people take it so seriously, and then it gets contentious, and then my mentions are never empty for the rest of the day, and then I have to take a whole weekend off of Twitter. So it's
we all fight about things that we have literally zero control over.
We do.
Which is, I'm like, it's one thing to feel a type of way, but don't let it ruin relationships you have, whether they're in real life or social media friends, because none of us have literal control over this.
Yeah, like seriously, like I like these because it makes you think, like, okay, how would this work out, or speculate. And outside of going to play NBA 2K and making these trades, this is what we do, and I like it. And I even that comment, right? Like, I like that. Okay, cool. You're challenging me to think. Oh, well, why do you think this way? That's fine. Like, I like it. So, hey,
it's a fun.
Harrison Barnes coming into the fold. I've been on board with that since day one.
You have.
Like, I've always been. I'm a Harrison Barnes guy, but hey, we'll see.
We've already decided on the nickname. It's Harry B.
Harry B, baby.
Harry B in the Valley.
Yeah, that's right. Just wait till we get that Manscaped read back.
Oh no. God.
No. Make sure you shave your Harry B and go to manscaped.com.
How are you just going to give out free advertisements? Oh, my goodness. Also, terrible.
I love how Lindsey's initial qualm was that you're giving out free
free advertisement. It's not about the crassness of what Saul said. It's about the free advertising here.
Oh, no, it's definitely both. It's just a lot easier to call you on the free advertisement than the other one. Like, because I can convince you to not do it for the free, but not the other.
This is true. You know me
being strategic here. So we did have a comment in the chat from Public Squares, said, can we spend a few minutes on Baxter Holmes reporting on Suns culture? We mentioned that when the tweet came out, and guys, like, I'm sorry, I've kind of been in and out. My phone has literally not stopped buzzing since the tweet hit. I don't think it is appropriate for us to comment on anything right now because the article did drop during the middle of our show. So give us a chance to go read it, collect some thoughts, and then we can have a conversation tomorrow.
Especially with the gravity of this situation. Like, listen, we've done this a million times before, and we definitely want to make sure that we're well prepared and well versed on what we're about to speak to because of the gravity of that situation. So completely agree with you, Lindsey.
Yeah, but sorry, Gerald, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it does deserve the adequate amount of time and attention and care for a story of this nature. So we will be talking about it tomorrow for sure. But for now, we want to make sure that we get a chance to read it, go through it, and discuss.
Yeah. All right. So if you want to come back for that, hang out with us tomorrow at 2 p.m., same place as always. Until then, you can follow me on Twitter at Lindsey Smith AZ. You can follow Gerald at Gerald Bourget, and you can follow Saul at Saul_Bookman. Saul, today is your day since Gerald went yesterday to close us out.
Remember, if you want to win a championship, you got to go with Harrison Barnes. Bye-bye, folks.
Bye, they.